right, well, this is episode 28 of Talk That Talk. I'm your host, Fallon Stokes, and I have a special guest this week. We have Dr. Lester Freeman, a pediatrician here in the Atlanta area, and has been doing great work for years. So let me just give a little background. You from Harlem, New York, born and raised. You attended high school, went to a prestigious high school up in NYC, and then eventually went to New York University, NYU, for higher learning. And then eventually you went to Rutgers Medical School to get your get your MD from up there, where you wanted to focus on pediatrics and became a pediatrician. So that was always something that I reading your story and your background, that you knew as young as 5 years old that you wanted to be a pediatrician. So I'll circle back on that, 'cause that was interesting to me that you even knew what that was at 5. But also, you've been inspiring. You really care about your patients and kids, and just educating, children, families about how to take care of kids and watch out for illnesses, especially as we go through this pandemic, or continue to move through this pandemic, where you have kids going back to school, and most of the children who are in at least elementary school, some middle school kids, unable to get a vaccination or get a shot that could possibly prevent or, decrease the chances of the effects they would have if they contract COVID-19. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I just want to talk about, how was it growing up in Harlem as a young kid, young Black kid, and just talk about that experience up in NYC.
Well, when you're in the midst of things, in the midst of growing up, you don't really appreciate everything that's going on around you until you actually leave the situation, or you become more mature as you age. I was when I was born. So when I was born, it was just right at the end of the civil rights movement. And Harlem had changed, because at some point, with the COINTELPRO, the program set up by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, it flooded our neighborhood with a lot of drugs. And where there's drugs, illegal drugs, there's crime and gangs and things of that nature. So certain things that other kids enjoyed in more rural or suburban areas, we didn't enjoy. For example, I've never been trick-or-treating in my life, because the neighborhood was so dangerous, and my parents didn't trust, the people in the environment. The only trick-or-treating we did was in class, when the teacher brought out candy, and that's as far as it went.
Okay.
And we didn't stay over at people's houses. There was no sleepovers. It was none of that. It wasn't until we moved when I was around 10 to Laurelton, Queens, when things opened up for us.
Okay.
We were able to choose our friends, because when we lived in Harlem, my parents chose our friends, which was wise, because some people out there were, out there.
Right.
They're very it's a very dangerous time, very very dangerous time. So, but yeah, when I left college, and I went to work actually in Harlem in 1988, 89. I worked for a place called Malcolm King College, and I was the tutoring resource center CEO at that college. And I was tutored and set up tutoring for adults. And it was different. And, you start to appreciate the culture too, because I was across the street from the Apollo Theater.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the building I was working in was the Hotel Teresa.
Okay.
Now, the Hotel Teresa, most people don't remember what the Hotel Teresa was. But back in those days, Black people could not stay in the Ritz-Carlton, could not stay at the Hilton hotels. We had to stay in predominantly Black-owned or Black-catered to hotels. And Hotel Teresa was the main one in Harlem. And that's the hotel that Malcolm X stayed in and had his meetings in. Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, basically the who's who of the Black elite. at the time. So it was a very interesting time.
Okay.
So it turned into from a hotel to office space.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, talk about this whole thought process. You said as early as 5 years old, you knew you wanted to be a pediatrician.
Correct.
Like, where did that come from? How did you even know at 5 what a pediatrician was?
Well, my father.
Okay.
See, it was around the holiday time,
Mm-hmm.
and my father had one of those old reel-to-reel tape recorders. You know, the ones with the mic, the long cord that's attached to the machine. So he ushered in all four of us, my brothers and sisters, and each asked each one of us what do we want for Christmas.
Uh-huh.
And so it was my turn, and so I told him what I wanted. And then he asked me a question no one had ever asked me up until that point. He asked me, he said, "But what do you want to be when you grow up?"
Mhm.
And I was like stunned. No one asked me that before. Then my father whispered in my ear, "Doctor or lawyer?" And I was like, "Doctor." And my father said, "Yay!" Then he goes, "Okay, what kind of doctor?" And just like that, I was like, "A baby doctor." And my father said, "Yay!" And from that point on, I was locked in. He asked me the same question the following year and the following year. Then he never asked me again, but I always was locked on being a baby doctor. And before I knew what the term was, I thought I wanted to be an OBGYN.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because they delivered babies.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, I found out what it was. I was like, no.
No.
And so I said, I'll stick with the kids once they're born.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
No, that's awesome. That's
So,
awesome. So, growing up, and especially I know your father probably was, but just talk about some of the mentors you had that gave you guidance, I guess, to stay focused and stay on track with your education, schooling, keep you out of trouble, to succeed and reach this goal of becoming a pediatrician.
well, keeping me out of trouble was was a challenge because I was very people probably won't see it now.
Uh-huh.
I was very rambunctious when I was a kid.
Okay.
Some things I did I can't repeat on the show or any show, but I got in trouble a lot.
Okay.
And so, but every single time, what was interesting is I would get into trouble. I would get into fights. I would start fights. Okay. But at the end of the day, when my report card came, it was A's and B's.
Okay. So you stayed on top of your grades.
Right. So teachers were like, that Lester Freeman, he's always causing trouble, blah, blah, blah. But, he's pretty bright. He gets good grades.
Uh-huh.
And so that saved me. That saved me on more than, one occasion. So I would say about the 5th or 6th grade, that's when I started really getting serious about school.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time I lived in Queens, and we were transferred to a school, from a public school to a Catholic school, a private school.
Okay.
And that school was very, very challenging. They challenged you. The public school, it ended at 3 p.m. The Catholic school ended at 1 or 1:30, but they gave you 3 to 4 times the homework that the public school across the street from us did. And they were serious about their work. And that was a challenge too, because not just the work and the workload, but the teachers themselves. It was predominantly a white school, and that was the first time I ever was in a predominantly white school. And now, normally that wouldn't be a problem,
right?
If everything being equal, but it became a problem because when I entered the school, it was a public school strike.
Okay.
And so I had to go to the school. And I didn't have, and anybody who's been to a Catholic school knows they wear uniforms.
Right.
At the time, we didn't have our uniforms, so we wear regular street clothes. And the teachers would make little comments that I was not sophisticated enough at age 10 or 11 to figure out that they were really insulting me, and just ignore that.
Look at you. Still got a house phone. You like my parents.
Right, I know, right? Anyway, so I remember one day when I was sitting in class, there was this girl sitting next to me, and she was giggling with this other girl. And she looked at me and she goes, Lester, can we ask you a question? Mm-hmm. And I know they're going to try to trip me up. But I said, go ahead. And she goes, what's your nationality?
What?
And I was like, excuse me? She goes, what's your nationality? I said, and that was the first time I ever heard that word.
Right.
And so she goes, I said, what do you mean? She goes, for example, I'm German Irish. That means my father was German and my mother was Irish. Mm-hmm. Now, what's your nationality? I said, I don't know. I'm just an African American. She goes, but where's your family from? My father's from Charlotte. My mother's from Savannah. Mm-hmm. And she goes, oh, but where were they from before that? And I was like, I guess Africa. She goes, what part of Africa?
Wow.
And then I was like, I don't know. She goes, that's because y'all were slaves. And then her and her girlfriend giggled and laughed. And I was like, and she caught me out there. And I was like, I will always remember that. Mm-hmm. I always remember that. And then that was part of my, the impetus for me to learn my past and my family history from that point on. Mm-hmm. And I just put it in the back of my mind. But the interesting thing about that girl is she was one of the dullest students in the school. But at that moment, she taught me something. It goes to show you, even your enemies or your opponents could teach you something that you don't know. Mm-hmm. So, but what's interesting is from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, even though the students were challenging, she wasn't the only one. They would say stupid things to me. They would rub up against me, go, oh, I'm sorry. I thought some black would rub off on me. You know, things of that nature. And I represented the class in the math bee and came in second place in the school math bee. Mm-hmm. When we got back to the class after the assembly, the teacher was very upset, and I didn't know what was going on because I was up on stage trying to win. So the teacher goes, I'm very disappointed at the whole class because during assembly you should have been quiet and you were there making noise while Lester was representing the class. And by the way, on that note, Lester, why is he representing us? He comes from a public school and he's representing the class.
Dang.
And I was like, what is that supposed to mean? You know, I'm a kid, I'm 11. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? And so she goes, from now on, it's going to be math. I'm doubling the math homework because this should never happen. And everybody was angry at me. You know, I was the only black guy in the class. And so everybody was really upset. And then later on that year, I represented the class in the spelling bee. So they were like, wow, what's this guy up to? But I noticed something over the years, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I noticed that when you're excellent at something, they don't mess with you. Mm. They find it hard to mess with you. Mm-hmm. And then the compliments start coming. Mm-hmm. You know, they'll say things like, wow, Lester, you know, you're really smart. You're really bright. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, it was a compliment, you know, but as time wore on, I was like, it's not a compliment anymore. I mean, this guy named Robert down, you know, who sits 4 rows from me, he gets the best grades in the class. But you don't say he's really smart. You just know he's smart.
Right.
But for me, you expect me to be something else. And then in 7th and 8th grade, the teachers did something that, you know, probably controversial today. She separated all the students into 3 classes. Class 1, class 2, class 3. Class 1 were the brightest students. Class 2 were the middle of the road average students. Class 3 was, you know, the not so bright students, the students that, you know, were like 70 on the IQ chart. Mm-hmm. And it was most of the blacks that were in the school by that time. There was like maybe 12, 15 of us out of maybe 250. Mm-hmm. Most of us were in either the first class or the second class. Mm-hmm. So we, you know, dominated as far as academics were concerned.
Mm-hmm.
because there was not one black person in class 3.
Okay. Okay.
So we did well, and they noticed this. They
Yeah.
noticed this,
Taking over.
right? And so they're like, wow, these black kids are pretty smart, And from that point on, uh, I was on a straight and narrow.
Okay.
I
Okay.
never, I was complete opposite. I never tried to make waves. I occasionally fought because, you have to fight. And this is New York.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, but by the time high school came along, I went to a public high school,
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Technical High School. And
Mm-hmm.
you had to have a test again. It's still the largest high school in the country.
Really?
Right. My graduating class was 2000.
Wow. Like a college.
Yeah. And by the time, when 9/11 hit, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of public schools like Stuyvesant, was also a great high school, they went to Brooklyn Tech for their classes because we had excess room. I mean,
Oh.
yeah, because our building was a city block long and like 10 floors high.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had to still have the largest high school in the country.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's still one of the top high schools. I think last time I checked, because I do. Last time I checked, it was in the top 20 of high schools in
In the country.
the whole country. Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I know, but I asked you too. You told me about, your formative years and, going
Mm-hmm.
through middle school to high
Right.
school. But who were some
Mm-hmm.
of your mentors? Who specifically did you get
Well,
guidance from?
well, my first mentors, of course, my parents.
Right.
They taught me what was right, what was wrong, and that influence was strong.
Right.
Very strong. And I remember one specific comment my father made when I was like 15, 16. He saw me coming from someplace that I normally don't come from, and he asked me what was I doing there, and I told him it was a legitimate excuse, and he goes, "Oh, okay. I know you think we're hard on you, but we don't want you to do anything stupid. Because if you do something stupid, they think you have stupid parents, and we're not stupid." And so I was like, "Yes, sir."
Right.
Then you have a few of my teachers.
Okay.
One was my math teacher in 8th grade. He was somebody who I could actually talk to about other things other than school. And I would say he was like the biggest influence, and in those early years. But when I got to high school, it was my chemistry teacher,
Okay.
Professor Gutierrez,
Okay.
and she had a very thick accent, and
Teaching
she
chemistry.
never called me, and she never called me by my first name. She always called me Freeman, and to this day, I wonder where she is.
Right.
But she was a huge influence, and she was really, really behind me. Whenever I had difficulty in any course beyond chemistry, she would help me out.
Right.
Whenever I slipped in any way, she would pull my coat and say, "Hey, what's going on with you? Why'd you get an 80? Why'd you get an 80 instead of a 95?" And I was like, she goes, "Yeah, you gotta pull those grades up." I was like, "Yes, ma'am." But those were my two major influences.
Okay. Okay. So talk about the rigors. I said you went to NYU and then you ended up going to Rutgers Medical School.
Right.
So talk about that experience, like the rigorous curriculum in medical school. And you did your residency there as well, right? Or did you do it somewhere else?
At UMD&J, right.
UMD.
Rutgers, that's correct.
Okay. Got you.
Now, people think that medical school is really hard, and it is.
Okay. Don't shortchange it now.
But you know what's harder?
What?
I think the hardest part was pre-med.
Okay.
Because I tell all prospective doctors this, or students this. I said pre-med is hard because they're trying to weed out the pretenders,
right?
People who aren't determined enough. And you need determination. I mean, there are a lot of people. I mean, I can honestly say without any ego that I wasn't the smartest person in pre-med, but I was the most determined. And I know that there are a couple of guys who I can think of off the top of my head, who I won't name, who actually tutored me while I was in college, and they didn't make it because because they weren't determined. You know, it wasn't a priority. But like I said, I wanted this ever since I was 5, and so it became a priority, and it was very, 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 very challenging. The pre-med part of it. By the time you get into med school and you're accepted, the mindset changes because the teachers there want you to succeed. The teachers there want you to learn as effectively as you can because it makes them look good.
Right.
If they have a 100% graduation rate, it makes the school look fantastic. And so they have all these resources whenever you have a student that's slipping available to you, so that you can do your best. And then when you get to residency, they even are more invested in making sure that you succeed because now they're paying you.
They're paying you. They putting money into you. Yeah.
They put money into you. Even medical school, they put money into you, even though you're paying. But in residency, they're actually paying you. They're paying you a salary. Now that wasn't always the case. Residents weren't paid a salary. Didn't start getting paid a salary until I think somewhere in the 70s.
Okay.
Because before that, you did it for free. Basically you were a grunt.
Right.
But then they start paying the residents, and so we would
get
paid.
Smart. I don't know. Too many residents working for free on me.
Exactly, and you have to stay up all night. I think that was the most taxing experience physically was residency because back in those days, I'm talking about the 90s, okay, and you stayed up 24 hours a day, sometimes 36 hours.
That's insane.
Right, and you stayed up and you had to take care of your patients. You had to do all the blood work. You had to follow up on the blood work. You had to follow up on the radiology reports. And then in the morning, when it's about 5:30, 6 o'clock, you have rounds. And when these rounds start, everybody comes in fresh, and you're dead tired. So if you forget something, heaven help you forget something. They go, okay, Freeman, which I hate people calling me by my last name. So they Freeman. So what happened overnight? You're exhausted.
Right.
And so, but they expect you to do your work, and then if you forget something, oh my gosh, because to them, every single patient is the most important. That's the mindset you have to have. Every single patient is the most important. And so you cannot forget anything. You can't let anything lapse. You can't, neglect anything that's a crime. And so they teach you what's the terminology my advisor gave me. She was also a big help, Dr. Bonnie Ward, and she would say, Lester, you have to develop a sense of urgency. Like everything is important, and you need to do it now.
Right.
And so, and I remember that, and I tell that to the people coming behind me when they're lackadaisical or flippant when it comes to doing something. I'm like, no, do it now. Yeah, but no, now.
Get it done. Right.
Because if you don't, you forget. Things will come up, and they always do. There's always an emergency. Always an emergency. And I remember one particular time when it was November, and it was snowing outside, and I was in the ICU. There's two kinds of ICUs. There's the pediatric ICU and there's a neonatal ICU.
Okay. I
was in the pediatric ICU, and it was so busy. All the beds were full. All these kids were complicated, and I was there. The fellow was there, and the attending, who's above all of us, were there.
Okay.
And we were all taking 15-minute cat naps. but it's not sleep at all. And so we were up all night, and then we were up during the day. They went home. I had to stay because I was the low man on the totem pole. And so the other attending who took their place at Lester go home. So I got up and took my book bag, and I was in scrubs, and I was walking across the street to get to my car. Then I said, you know what? There's something different. There's something I'm missing. I wonder if I'm forgetting something. And then I realized it. It was like 10 degrees, and I didn't have my coat on. I was freezing. I was freezing. I had no coat on, and I had to turn back around, get my coat, and drive home. I fell asleep on the way home, and so when I finally made it home, I just crashed into bed and slept all the way until the next morning, where I had to do the whole thing all over again.
Wow.
So physically, it was the most taxing.
I can believe it.
And that's why you see most residents, when they start out, everybody's early 20s or mid 20s, fresh faced. By the time they finish, people are losing their hair. People are gray. People gain like 20, 30 pounds. It's brutal.
Yeah.
And so you appreciate sleep a lot more when you're after you become a resident.
I can believe it. It. So, talk about once you got established and you opened up your own practice, your practice you have here in Atlanta, TLC Pediatrics LLC. Talk about how you've been successful in running your own practice. I know being a doctor, the medicine and the medical side, but sometimes they may not understand the business side of things and just trying to be successful. Talk about your success.
Well, that's 100% true. But prior to coming to Atlanta, I spent a year and a half at Temple.
Okay.
Temple had a children's hospital briefly.
Okay.
And so I was there when it opened.
Okay.
And I was so used to being the only, black person there. I was the only black person on the team. And but I learned a lot.
Okay.
Because then after residency, there's nobody above you to bounce questions off of. So it's just you and your colleagues.
Okay.
And so I learned how to, make decisions, for myself.
Okay.
And I saw cases at Temple that I never saw when I was doing my residency at Cooper Hospital in Camden.
Okay.
And but like I said, being the only black person there had its, challenges. And like I said, I remember at one point, one of my colleagues walked up to me and said, "Hey, Lester." I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "You know what? You're pretty smart."
You heard that.
And I was like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
So are you. So are you.
So are you, right?
But it just goes to show you. And he thought that was a compliment. And it is, but it isn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I spent like a year and a half there. But I knew it wasn't for me. I was a hospitalist. And anybody who doesn't know what a hospitalist is, it's just a doctor that spends most of his time in the hospital as opposed to a clinic or an emergency department or anything like that. But you have to stay there overnight. It's like being a glorified resident, a glorified intern. And by the time the first night I was there, I knew in my mind, I said, this is not for me.
Okay.
And then I made the decision early on that I was going to go into private practice, and I was going to go to Atlanta. And that was the beginning of my journey here. And as far as going back to your question, as far as the business side of it, business side of it is something that none of us are prepared for, unless you get a combined MD, MBA.
Right.
Which there were very few of those. But the people who are just clinicians, because that's all I ever wanted to be. I just want to diagnose things, make you feel better, and send you back home alive. Okay. And so I had to learn it through my uncle, Dr. William Bland. And
best ever do it.
Oh yeah, without doubt. And I learned from my colleague, Dr. Leslie Myers Joseph, and and other individuals, nurse practitioners. And you always learn things from people that you can use to better your practice. But as far as the business side is concerned, that was challenging because I had to wear a hat that I'm not used to wearing.
Right.
And that means I had to hire people, fire people, assess people, evaluate people on a regular basis, and that takes time. If I had to do just the clinical part of it, I'd be a happy man. Now I'm still happy, but I'll be happier. So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and that goes hand in hand with running any type of business or being in private practice, whether it's, being a doctor, being a lawyer, any type of, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to understand that business side of it. And I think that's really hard for people to grasp sometimes, especially when they have all this training in the area that they're practicing. But when you have to, put that business hat on and do well in that so you can be successful, that's a tough adjustment.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Can I make one more
Yeah,
point?
go ahead.
There are a lot of doctors
Uh-huh.
who are living paycheck to paycheck, which may surprise a lot of people because they have zero business acumen. Zero business acumen. So they're always behind on their bills. They're always behind on, their own personal bills. If you're behind on the office bills, chances are you're behind on your personal bills too.
Right.
And those things just accumulate, just snowballs.
Yeah.
And so some doctors, literally, sometimes they go bankrupt. But I told myself that will never happen to me.
Look at you.
So I made sure I paid attention to the bills in the office and the bills at home, especially because you slip up in any one of those areas, it's a bad turn.
I can believe it.
Oh yeah.
So let's dive in on a serious note. COVID-19 and this pandemic, and you're a pediatrician, so I know you've seen certain cases, with your patients or just the ordeals kids or just people have been going through during this pandemic. But right now with the schools, we live in Georgia. It turned blue, but this is still a pretty conservative state.
Sure.
And Governor Kemp said a few months ago or a couple of months ago, he was not going to mandate masks in public schools. But he came back and also said he was going to leave it up to the school district's discretion if they did mandate it. So you have some counties, or I know like Atlanta Public Schools, Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett counties is mandatory, but right now Cobb is one of those counties that's in limbo where it's optional. And there's other counties around the state that are doing something similar as we continue to see the rise in cases amongst children who are now contracting COVID-19. So just talk about like the importance maybe of mask wearing, or how do you feel about, the decisions that have been made and not mandating masks right now and how politicized this has become?
Well, you just hit the nail right off the top of the head. And the first thing I think is very unfortunate is the politics behind this entire situation.
Right.
Okay. They politicize it to an extent where it's harmful to the average American. This is a public health problem, not a politics problem. It should have been easy. It should have been a cakewalk.
Right.
Unfortunately, we had a commander-in-chief that didn't really understand a lot of things. I mean, the not just the nuances, but simple in-your-face things.
Right.
And so that trickled down to the governors and mayors and legislatures, and they started making it difficult for people to survive, basically. And that's unfortunate because we lost over 660,000 people last count. And that's a lot of people. I just read a report today, 1 in every 500 people, Americans, are going to die from this disease. And I think everybody by now knows somebody or knows of somebody that's either had a serious case of COVID with the subsequent complications, or they know somebody who's actually died of it. And this is real. It's not a hoax. We've gone beyond that hoax talk.
Right.
When you see your neighbor dying, when you see your family member dying, you know it's the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had what's that disc jockey in Tennessee who said it was anti-masker, anti-vaxxer, who unfortunately contracted COVID-19 and died from it. And so it's the real thing. And everybody remembers Herman Cain.
Yeah.
Herman Cain he posted pictures up on Instagram bragging about the fact that he didn't have a mask at a Trump rally.
Right.
He was dead less than a month later.
Sure was.
So this is the real thing, and nobody likes masks. Okay? The only people who wore masks on a day-to-day basis are surgeons and anesthesiologists.
Right.
You know, I hate wearing masks.
Right.
I don't know anybody who enjoys wearing a mask.
Nobody does.
Right, and nobody enjoys getting a vaccine either.
No.
I'll say, but it's necessary if you want to stay alive. You know, if you don't have a death wish, then you have to do what you need to do for your family and for yourself to make sure that you do whatever you can to make to bring happiness and health to your loved ones.
Right. Well, because I know we've had a lot of candid conversations over the pandemic, and especially about this. And I know when they were talking about this vaccine, like towards the end of 2020, I would talk to you about it. I was like, what's up with this vaccine? You getting this vaccine? And you would be like, that's pretty quick to put out a vaccine that quickly for, something of this magnitude. Usually it takes a few years for testing and then to eventually get FDA approval. But we knew we were in a health crisis and it was an emergency. So they moved it fast. And I know you were listening to you. I was thinking the same thing. I'm not getting that vaccine at least for another year out. Then it starts rolling in. I know my parents got it. They surprised me. They were saying the same thing. And then I changed my tune. And I know we talked about that so I could just get better or some information and try and be as informed as possible in making that decision, which I think was probably the best decision I could have made. But just talk about like now with this rollout with the booster shot. This is something that's going to be our new normal for quite some time. And now we're working on the vaccine for kids who are, I guess, under the age of 12 who cannot get the vaccine right now. So, they think that will be available at the end of this year, maybe the beginning of 2022. But what are your thoughts, and how they've been moving with the vaccines and getting approval to distribute amongst the public?
One thing that I'm grateful for is that I have contacts with the CDC, ACIP. Those are organizations that have to do with vaccines and the consequences of vaccines, because there's some side effects to everything you take.
Right.
And so one of the things that one of my contacts told me from the CDC was that in reality, this vaccine was being worked on for a long time prior to this pandemic, because coronavirus is not a new virus.
I didn't know that until I looked at the Lysol can.
Right.
And had it on there. I was like, wait a minute.
Exactly. It's been around for a long time. And they've been trying to develop vaccines for even then, for earlier versions. Because remember, this is COVID-19. That means there were 18 versions before this. And so, and now it's mutated. Everybody knows it by COVID-19, but there's been so many mutations on top of that you could say it's like COVID-30 or COVID-50.
Right.
Because if you think about it logically, viruses want to live too.
They do.
Right. And so if they find out that they're not infecting a host the way they should, or the host that has some sort of resistance, the virus will mutate to a point where it's going to offset whatever defenses the host body has. And so it's going to mutate, and that's why we have the Delta variant and the Lambda variant and all these other variants. Okay, they want to live too, and so that's why things are a little bit more challenging now, because you have the Delta and the Lambda, which are more infectious than the original COVID-19 virus. And once I was armed with that information, then it was a no-brainer for me to get the vaccine.
Got you.
Right.
Got you.
No-brainer. Now, as far as the booster is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably going to be a way of life, because since the numbers are still rising tremendously,
Mm-hmm.
and since there's no vaccine available for those under 12, that means
Mm-hmm.
those kids under 12 are going to school being exposed, and even if they don't get sick, they're carriers and they bring it home to their parents,
Mm-hmm.
or their sick relatives, or their aunt, uncle, grandparent, and then they catch it and they pass away.
Right.
And so it's a major problem.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the, I know you know, without getting so specific, but what are some of like the effects you're seeing, like from kids who long-term effects or the after effects of contracting COVID-19? Like, what are you seeing in some of your patients?
Well, I have two patients in particular. They've both been hospitalized post COVID-19 infection
Mm.
with inflammation of the coronary arteries. The coronary arteries are the arteries which supply the heart. And
Mm.
they have symptoms where they have literal heart attacks. They have
Wow.
chest pains as if they're 80 or 90-year-olds.
Wow.
And then they have to be put on those protocols, given aspirin, given IVIG, which is intravenous immunoglobulins, in order to rid themselves of the inflammatory effects or post effects of the virus.
Right.
Okay, so a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old with heart problems,
That's insane.
it's ridiculous. And then you have the neurological problems.
Mm.
You have the kids who develop Guillain-Barré, which is an ascending paralysis. So it starts from your toes and it works its way up, and you're paralyzed for most people. It's just a um, temporary complication.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, there's some permanence to it.
Hmm.
And then you have the people with, like a couple of friends of mine who caught the disease, who have problems with their lungs,
Mm-hmm.
where their lung function isn't as robust as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have difficulty breathing, just
Mm.
breathing like they used to. I mean, these are healthy men and women.
Right.
And while before they used to walk, like I had a friend of mine, he had it, he was in the hospital for 9 days, okay, thinking he was going to die. So he finally gets out, and it takes him weeks. He said that just the simple act of brushing his teeth wore him out.
Mm-hmm.
To climb the stairs to get to his bedroom, he needed to take a nap.
Wow.
And even now, it's been over a year. For him to walk up 1 block wore him out. He needed to sit and take a rest.
Mm.
And so these effects are real. They did an X-ray of one of my friends, and they said there's a part of the lung, the base of the lung, because you have the top of the lung, which is called the apex,
Mm-hmm.
and the bottom, which is called the base.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of the base of the lung, because he had multifocal, which means multiple areas of pneumonia, COVID pneumonia. And so there's part of the lung, the bottom part of the lung, which has not fully inflated yet.
Wow.
So it's still dormant, and it hasn't really inflated, because your lungs are just a bunch of balloons.
Mm-hmm.
And if those balloons on the bottom can't fill up like they used to, then your breathing capacity is compromised.
Mm. Yeah, it's serious.
Mm-hmm.
And if people don't recognize it, you know, that's what I said. I mean, by this time, it's touched us all in some shape or form, with either knowing somebody who's had it or knowing somebody who's passed away from it. But you know, sometimes I think it goes unsaid with the effects of people who survive it, and how the long term effects, you know, life changing effects of it, that they have to deal with for the rest of their lives unless something drastically changes to correct it. Um, but those are some glaring issues, especially with young kids having heart conditions based on the after effects of contracting COVID. That's mind boggling right there to me.
And you know what else has increased since the quarantine? People were quarantined. They call it the quarantine 15. Like people gain like 15 pounds.
Yeah.
No, no, no. It's
No?
not 15. It's more like 20 or 30.
Yeah, I was about to
Okay.
say, it's not the freshman 15 when you go to college and put on some
Right.
weight. Like I've even seen drastic, even in my body, like initially I'm pretty active, but very
Right.
active. And then now getting back into the form of working again. And you just realizing having to put on suits, clothes. You're like, oh, stuff doesn't fit how it
Right.
was fitted prior to, but it's an adjustment. And I know obesity has been an issue in this country for decades, and now it's a virus that
Right.
loves to attack people who are in those types of situations or have those body types, pre-existing conditions. But that's something that's critical too that we have to pay attention to. Is just keeping ourselves healthy and being active in some way, I think.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the quarantine 15, and I noticed it when people started coming back
Uh-huh.
to the office, I diagnosed twice as many people with diabetes. I
Wow.
thought it was just my imagination, but my teenagers especially were coming in 20, 30 pounds heavier. And then this report came out in one of the pediatric periodicals.
Uh-huh.
It says here, staggering, type 2 diabetes doubles in children during pandemic.
Wow.
It's doubled because kids have nothing to do but sit and eat, sit and eat, sit and eat. And
Right.
you put on 30 pounds quickly when you do that. So you put on 30 pounds, and then if you're susceptible, if you have a family history especially
Right.
of diabetes, then that's going to kick in. And,
Mm.
and then so now a lot of my kids are working their way through this, and it's very difficult.
Explain type 2 diabetes just for my listeners. So is that something that's curable? You can fix that? Is it curable and like you could just be, you know,
It's the
go
difference
ahead.
between type 1 and type 2. Type 2 is usually in older children or adults.
Okay.
Okay. It
Okay.
basically means that you overworked your pancreas. Your pancreas is the organ in your body which puts out glucagon and insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you overworked your pancreas to the point where its insulin producing capability is not what it was.
Mm.
And so that's why your sugars get very high, because your insulin is responsible for regulating that. Your glucagon is responsible for regulating that. So without enough insulin in your body, your sugars are haywire.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have uncontrolled sugars, it affects, people don't realize that diabetes is a multi-organ system disorder. It affects everything from your brain all the way down to your feet.
Mm.
And so you develop a fatty liver, affects your liver, affects your brain cells, it affects your circulatory system, your blood vessels, it affects your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where that's why you see, a lot of people who have diabetes or have something called neuropathy. Neuropathy
Mm-hmm.
means there's a pathological process going on with your nerve endings to the point where you can't feel usually the end point of your body, which is your fingers and your toes. That's
Mm-hmm.
why people who have been diabetics for a while develop it, and they also develop it to the point where their foot literally dies, and they get their toes amputated, their whole
Mm-hmm.
foot amputated, sometimes their whole leg amputated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they go blind, they
Mm-hmm.
have heart problems, their kidney is affected. It's a mess.
Mm.
It's a mess. You
Control
know,
so much.
yeah, and it can be, as far as being cured is concerned. Most people don't say cured. Most people say it could be treated.
Treat it. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Um,
Because sometimes
because
I just hear stories like people I know have gone to the doctor. They said, I'm borderline diabetic. I'm at the cusp and I need to do certain things to backtrack. So I'm not there. So that's why I just never knew. Is it, you can get to a point where you don't have to maybe take insulin or you don't have to take medication for it. It just may be
right,
consistent diet.
that's true. You
Okay.
can do that. I mean, I've known people who've like they measure it by something called the hemoglobin A1c
Okay.
in your bloodstream, which they measure. The hemoglobin A1c measures the sugar content that's for over the last 3 months of
Mm-hmm.
your diet. So it's very, very, it's not what you just say. is what you've been eating for the last 3 months. So if you're like most, I know of 3 new diabetics in my practice, and their hemoglobin A1c was 14, 12, 10, way too high. And so they usually wind up getting into trouble, going to diabetic ketoacidosis, where their sugars are so high you can't even measure it, and they end up in the hospital. Or if there's type 2, then they develop a diabetic coma. They literally go into a coma. And so it's a real serious disease. And pre-diabetes is when you're inching up to like 5.7, 5.8, and that's when they call you pre-diabetic. Okay. So that's when you have to work on your diet, and it's doable. It's doable. You just have to make a commitment. And once you work on your diet, and you can bring it down to less than 5.6. I've seen people who started out at 8 or 9 or 10, went all the way down to 5.3, 5.2. And they look great, they feel great, but the thing about it is they can't slip. They can't say, you know what? They can have one meal. They can even have, one day maybe, but if they do it consistently, they'll fall back into those large numbers again. And so that's why I never say cure for those individuals, because they can't eat like they used to when they were 20, 25, or prior to their being diagnosed. Right. Because they're like sitting on the razor's edge. They don't have that much room on either side of them. So if they slip with their diet or their exercise, their nutrition in general, they'll fall back. And the same problems will happen again. It's a chronic, progressive illness, but you can slow it down tremendously if you want to. If you just change your lifestyle.
Yeah, that's easier said than done. But I know for most, that's what they have to do. That's what they have to do. So I always like to end the show with the talk that talk questions, the triple TQs. Okay. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions and you just give me your response off the top of your head. So the first one, what advice would you give to aspiring pediatricians, people who want to get into pediatrics?
Depends on the age so you're talking about the youth, okay?
The youth, okay.
So, I would say 1, have a love for math and science, because you'll be seeing it for the rest of your life. Okay. 2, always do something every year during the summer, which leads you towards your ultimate goal. If your goal is pediatrics, if your goal is medicine, then you should be doing something that will lead you to that goal. For example, I draw. I'm an artist, and so every summer I would draw a picture of a heart, or a liver, or a kidney, and I would label the parts to it, and that was fun. That was fun to me. You have to, because you have to enjoy what you do. You really have to enjoy what you do, and if you find it tedious or boring or too much, then chances are that's not really the career goal for you. Right. But you have to love it. You have to enjoy it. I am very fortunate. My father and I had a conversation when I was 18. And he said there's a difference between a job and a career. Right. Between a job and a profession. Right. He said when he goes to work, he was a CEO. Okay. And when he went to work, he had to go to work. He didn't enjoy going to work. Gotcha. But when I wake up in the morning, I can't wait to go to work. That's awesome. My colleagues and people, I'm usually the last one in the building. They're like, Dr. Freeman, go home. Because I enjoy what I do. And I love talking to the patient. I love watching them grow. I love developing a bond with them. I got you. Yeah, it's very important. And after a while, you do this for a number of years, they're not just patients anymore. They become part of your family, and you become part of theirs. Right. And it's a beautiful thing. They invite you to graduations, the cookouts, the, birthday parties, weddings, and you name it. Yeah.
It's a big deal. You've been in the lives of most of these kids from like an infant until they're 18. Some probably beyond then. I know sometimes I went back to my pediatrician when I was in college for certain things. So Dr.
Yes,
Bland. So I was like
I remember. I remember. I remember. I remember.
Oh man.
It's a big deal.
It
It's a
is.
big deal.
It is.
And by you just saying that, you're trying to say that I'm old.
No, 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 no. I'm not.
I'm teasing.
So explain the impact that the practice of medicine has had on your life.
Well, when I was in college, I was very shy, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really, open my mouth unless someone spoke to me.
Right.
But one of the things that we had in order to prepare ourselves for medical school interviews was mock interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would go up there with our suit and tie and pretend it was a real interview.
Mm-hmm.
And we had actual professional people who were already doctors doing the interviewing. So
Okay.
they knew what they were talking about.
Uh-huh.
And so, one, it's allowed me to open up and not be afraid to be myself,
Mm-hmm.
which is great because sometimes I can be really silly. And with kids, you can be silly with kids
Mm-hmm.
because they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
But as they get older, then you have to temper that. Um, and so and it gives you the opportunity to use your mind.
Uh-huh.
And I think our mind, reason why there's so much dementia, things of that nature, because people stop learning.
Mm.
And medicine is one thing that you have to keep on top of. You have to be up to date. So that means you have to do some reading. So I set aside time, especially on the weekends, on Sundays specifically, at a specific time where I
Mm-hmm.
don't answer the phone unless it's an emergency,
Mm-hmm.
and where I can do some reading, where I can catch up. Oh, wow, that's interesting, you know, and then I can use it to better serve my patient population.
Right. Right. Now that's important. You
Right?
every
Yeah.
doctor should continue always learning. Um, and the last question, what is the legacy that you want to leave for future generations?
Well, the legacy I want to leave is, and sometimes I never thought about my legacy. I just wanted to do the best I could.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to do the best job I could.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted people to say at the end of the day that Dr. Freeman may not be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but one, he cares about us.
Right.
He loves us even, and he will do anything to make sure that if I don't know the answer, I will direct you to somebody that will.
Got you.
And that I always do the very best I can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the legacy I want to leave behind. That I do the very best I can,
Okay.
and I want you to see it. I want you to feel it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's important for me to let you know. Like I said, no human being is perfect,
Right.
but even my predecessors, they would tell me some things, some areas where they fell short,
Mm-hmm.
and but we're all human beings. But just as long as you do your best, I think that people will appreciate it. They will see it, and they will acknowledge it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, yeah. And I spoke to one family, and they said, "Wow, we really appreciate you." And it just came out of the blue. They just
Mm-hmm.
said, "We really appreciate you
Mm-hmm.
taking care of our daughters all these years, and we just want to let you know that." And at that moment, sometimes my mind was in a place where um, I kind of doubted. It was like, man, am I getting through to to my patients? And when Mom said that, it kind of you know, uh, made me feel very, very good that I was actually doing something that was working.
Right. Making a
Sometimes you
difference.
have to, yeah, make a difference. It reminded me that what I'm doing was necessary, was important, and was needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We always need great medical professionals and physicians. It's important to keep us on this earth, keep us breathing and surviving and thriving. So
Right.
I applaud you for the work, and those were some good responses to those questions. But
Thank you.
I also always do this, and I usually do it solo, but I give a Black business shout out. And this week, since you are technically a Black business owner and an entrepreneur, I'm gonna shout you out. TLC Pediatrics LLC, and that's where they can find you. That's your website too. Well, that could lead people to your website. But
Right.
just tell us a little bit about your, practice, maybe location, and what you can offer to your patients in your practice.
Well, we're located in Southwest Atlanta,
Dang.
across the street from the MARTA Hightower station, or H.E.
Mhm.
Holmes station.
Right.
We're in the old Otis Smith building, and we've been there since the practice has been there since 1969.
Long time.
I haven't been there since 1969,
You were really about
but
to age yourself. You've been there since
um,
1969.
the building has been there, and
Mhm.
so um, what we offer is a first-rate pediatric experience. Um, we invite the families in. We have a meet and greet where we meet prospective parents
Mhm.
who are basically interviewing the local pediatricians to see which ones uh, they want to actually handle their child, because it's a big deal.
Right.
It really is a big deal. One, you want to find somebody that's knowledgeable.
Mhm.
Two, you want to find someone that actually cares.
Right.
And I feel that myself and the nurse practitioners and everybody that's come before me um, fulfill all those qualifications.
Right.
We're trying to get funding
Okay.
for our new building which is going to be off Lyndhurst,
What?
and so it's going to be a whole state of the art practice,
Nice. Nice.
and so that's our goal. And it's not for me; it's for the community, because the
Mhm.
community has been waiting for this for a while.
Right.
Because my patients always ask me, are you guys ever going to move to that new facility? I'm like, yes. We're just trying to isolate and secure the funding. And so they're like, okay. So
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
that's our goal.
Got you. Got you. But that building has like a legacy, a tradition. I mean, that's the same building I went to to see my
Right, right.
pediatrician. So I know it's been around for a long time, treating a lot of children in Atlanta or the metro Atlanta area. So I mean, it's like a pillar in this community when you look at it. It's a somewhat of a monument that's been there for a long time, with a lot of physicians who worked in and out of that building to serve the community. So it's awesome.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Dr. Bland, Dr. William H. Bland, Dr. Otis Smith, Dr. Herbert Jones Sr.,
Mhm.
they started in that building, and they were one of the three of the first Black doctors in Atlanta.
Mhm.
So it has a very powerful legacy,
Right.
very powerful legacy.
Right.
And being the first in anything is very difficult.
It's very difficult.
It's
And
very
being the
difficult,
first Black person to do a lot of things, that's very difficult.
extremely.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. But they persevered, and they always did great work, and gave us great service. So we
Yes.
continue to applaud their legacy, and we'll continue to watch yours and how you move forward in the future. But I want to thank you, Dr. Freeman, for joining the podcast this week.
Thank
And,
you.
this was a good episode, very informative. I mean, I might need to get you back on here another time if we can get some updates or something. But this was
I
awesome
appreciate that.
being on here. All
Thank you.
right. Well, this was another one. We're gonna keep it rolling, but this was a great interview, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you.
Well, this was another great episode of Talk That Talk, episode 28. I had the pleasure of having Dr. Lester Freeman on the show, MD Dr. Lester Freeman, a pediatrician here in the metro Atlanta area, servicing kids, children around the city, and has been doing it for years, providing great service to this community. So I always like to have people who are doing great work in the community come on my podcast, join. And he was very informative and really enlightened us about information dealing with COVID-19, kids, and the cases that he's seeing in some of his patients, and the after effects that these children or his patients are suffering from, and even people he knows, the after effects of adults that are contributing factors or continuously are factors that they will have to deal with for the rest of their life because they had COVID-19. So it's important. We have to stay informed and, make sure we protect ourselves, wear a mask, keep it on strong, because that's a barrier of protection. And as we continue to progress during these times, we have to continue to listen to the medical professionals, the doctors, stop politicizing COVID-19, stop politicizing masks. It's important. We just got to stay informed and make good decisions for ourselves and for our families. But this was another great episode 28. Please continue to subscribe, watch, and stay tuned for the next one. This was a good one. See you next time.